Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us. We have a discussion on regionalism and legal integration, experience of other regions. And our speaker today is Mr. Muhammad Mustafa Hussain, who is an assistant professor at the School of Law, BRAC University, Bangladesh. His research includes his research interests include cybersecurity, national security, international law, and states' interests, refugees, and environment. He is also a visiting professor at Kathmandu School of Law, Nepal, and resident professor of ESDR. He has a number of publications to his credit. He keeps contributing on cutting edge issues in the national daily newspapers in Bangla and English. Over to you, Mr. Muhammad Mustafa Hussain, sir. As I've already told you, it's going to be a 1 hour long session, and you will decide when your talk is going to end, and you will be ready to take any questions from the participants. Over to you, sir.
Uh, Thank you, Marsab, for your nice introduction. And thank you all for joining. I wholeheartedly thank PRISA for organizing this lecture and inviting me. This is really a very timely formation of such a unique think tank, London-based, which has focus on South Asia in particular. And in my experience in the legal field, as a student of law for over 20 years, one of the important aspect which always triggered me is about the question of regional integration, the question about the South Asian integration, and we kept working on this in last many years, honestly, in terms of how historically the region we all belong to had been connected and had progressed. However, over the last few centuries, particularly over the last centuries, we have encountered the challenges of sovereignty questions. And at the same time, if you look at the global paradigm in other parts of the world, the questions about regional integration has been a very strong tool and a positive instrument for those regions to progress and develop. So that is where our topic has certain strong relevance, particularly for our region. And the picture is also quite similar when we look into the broader Asian aspect. I will be mainly focusing on the legal aspects and will try to see how the regional forums and bodies, particularly the regional court mechanism, immensely contributed and strengthened the regional integration of Europe, North America, North and South America, as well as Africa. What we see in Asia is a reverse situation, and that is where I think we need to have extensive engagements in the intellectual and policy level work. And there comes the relevance of the instrument, the forum and platform like PRISA. So as you all know that the modern framework of global order is based on the sovereignty principles. Nation states have grown after the Westphalian conclusion of the war. And then, of course, we have experienced several challenges across the world, particularly the question of colonization, which has brought a miserable history for us. And then what is important for our lecture is that when we say regional integration from the legal point of view, the first focus we try to look into is in the context of Europe. So there was a study we conducted around 10 years back, looking into the implication or influence of legal instruments in developing regional integration. And there we had we tried to see the impact of treaty laws on particular regions. And the hypothesis for the work was that the more treaties a particular region has, the better integrated that region is. And based on that, we have seen the European region having bundles of international treaties and agreements, regional treaties and agreements among themselves, which is perfectly astounding. And it is not only that they have the national identity, it is also that they have created a regional identity. And I know Professor Raj and I, we kept advocating these ideas, particularly when we work with Kathmandu School of Law, where we share our views on this point. So on the question that why Europe has taken that lead in the regional integration, is that there is a contrary understanding that when earlier concept of just war, which was a means to settle issues, has been prohibited, then there was no way to engage war. So then nations realized the importance of settling the disputes peacefully. And if you look at the United Nations Charter, the adoption of the Charter, and before that, if you look at the 1899 and 1907 Hague Peace Conferences, where they come out with the idea of creating a permanent court of arbitration, which has been able to settle enormous disputes so far. And settlement of dispute is one area where the integration really works. Now, why in the context of Europe, particularly after the post-World War II, they come out with the regional integration, and there they have established primarily the European Court of Justice, which deals with disputes between and among European nations. Another aspect which I consider very significant was the creation of European Court of Human Rights. As we all, I think, are in a position to grasp the scenario that the post-World War II global order, particularly the United Nations Charter, primarily focused on the sovereignty of states, equality, and dignity of individuals, ensuring individuals' fundamental human rights and freedom, and of course, the dignity of individuals. In order to implement that, state itself is not a sufficient tool. And that is where the idea has come out that to have a regional court. So European Court of Human Rights, if we go through some of the judgments, like it has made enormous contribution. A citizen of, for example, Germany, can certainly go before the European Court of Human Rights, and he can challenge the Supreme Court of Germany's decision. So I think a supranational particular body, in order to protect the dignity and the fundamental freedoms or human rights of individuals, the European Court of Human Rights has played a significant role. Now, it has a very from a different perspective, it has a very sustainable and impactful contribution. Like when a citizen is not happy or is aggrieved by the decision of his national courts, while approaching the regional court and there, enforcing their individual's rights, the particular aggrieved person realize and feel the significance of such kind of organizations in order to understand that these types of bodies are vanguard or protecting their freedom. Whereas it also, I mean, such kind of human rights courts also creates a balance in between the state's national interest and individual's dignity. So this is how citizens all over the region realize the significance of such kind of bodies, and this is how the integration process continues strengthening. Now, there is, of course, I'm sure a question may arise, about the UK's standing of going beyond or coming back from the regional integration with European Union. That has a prolonged discussions, and that has a long-lasting, that has many other considerations impacted. Now, if you look at the advantage the regional integration has given to the Europe is that if and as we see in WTO dispute settlements, the European community collectively fight in protecting their trade interest, and that is certainly, that gives benefits, certainly that strengthens their position in the making of global trade related policies. They have a strong voice collectively that creates enormous impact in terms of their regional integration, as well as in terms of establishing their bargaining points, and certainly that has ultimately led to the creation of global rules and regulations, what we understand and call them as international treaties. So in the context of Europe, we have seen there are not only European Court of Human Rights, there is one more particular body which is, which has got attraction, is the European Free Trade Area Court. So that also deals with trade related aspects in the context of European region. Now, moving on to the Inter-American region, one of the remarkable achievement for that region is the creation of Inter-American Court of Human Rights. And the court is proactive in dealing with the issues like protecting individuals' rights. So how these individuals' rights are protected? First, as we all know that in any nation state, the domestic constitution safeguards and offers bundles of rights which can be enforced by the court if citizens are aggrieved. So certainly the national bodies, the national constitutions cannot guarantee all the human rights provided under international human rights mechanism. In order to ensure that individuals are not deprived of certain fundamental rights which has been promised in the United Nations Charter, their regional bodies creates a convention, a treaty related to human rights, and that treaty safeguards or offers human rights to individuals, rights to the citizens of this particular region, where these citizens can exercise those rights. So like European Court of Human Rights, in the Inter-American region, the countries, the citizens of those countries also avail the benefit from the Inter-American Court of Human Rights. Other than that, in the Inter-American region, we have also seen a court for the Central American Court of Justice, and that has also been created long back. And countries like Costa Rica, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, and Nicaragua are parties to that. In addition to that, we see the Caribbean Court of Justice in the West Indies area that also deals with the settlement of disputes. So one of the important aspects what we try to understand is that it is not only the cultural aspects, it is not only the political aspects. So in order to ensure regional integration, legal aspects are particularly significant. Unless the legal issues are safeguarded properly, unless the institutions are built, the continuation of the regional bodies will face challenges, and that is what happened with SAARC. That is what happened with many other Asian regional attempts and efforts. On the other hand, if we look at the African aspect, in terms of the instruments, in terms of the regional identity, certainly the 50+ countries region has offered bundles of exemplary contributions, but certainly because of the economic and political questions, they have some limitations. However, the efforts and their attempts in strengthening the regional integration in the legal area is very well found. Like the African Court of Human and People's Rights, again, is one of the model comparing with the European and Inter-American Court that has also been functioning. The problem and the challenges they encounter is the willingness of the states to implement the decisions. Apart from that, East African region, we find the East African Court also, East African Court of Justice, and for the West Africa, the ECOWAS Community Court of Justice is another one that deals with the disputes of the West African region. So these are primarily the three courts which are in the West African region. The thing is that as long as these institutions are functioning and alive, there are prospects about more integration in the days to come. And that is what we see in the context of other regions, in the context of Europe, in the context of American region, and in the context of Africa. The situation is certainly reverse when we look at the Asian picture. When the human rights instruments are adopted globally, then Arab communities come up with the idea of having its own regional Arab code, its own regional Arab Charter of Human Rights. But certainly that did not work well. They have given a different, mechanisms for the refugee regulation in the Arab region. That also did not, function, and that also did not implement it well. If you look at Asian picture, I think preferably the Southeast Asian region is performing better. there is a sense of regional integration, a sense of regionalism, where other than Myanmar, which is a challenge for them, and certainly otherwise all the countries are working well. And ASEAN as a region also, we see to have a voice, collective voice for the regions. But in terms of structuring institutions like courts, tribunals, as we have seen in the context of Europe, Africa, and Inter-America, such mechanisms have not been uh, developed here in the ASEAN. However, one of the progressing aspect is that several years back, they have tried, and they have and talked about developing a human rights commission for the region of Southeast Asia. But uh, the the thing is that it did not come into force with its strength. But nonetheless, there are talks going on in ASEAN to have more bodies, to have more integration, particularly on the question of human rights. Uh, there is one challenge here that is about their commitment that will not interfering or intervening in the internal affairs of any particular state. So I think for that scope of their functioning, they have encountered a particular challenge. Now, when we look into the South Asian aspect, particularly, uh, you know, and as I was in South Asian University for 4 years, so there we see a sense of integration among the students. Uh, the challenge, of course, there are abundance. Previously, SARC was trying to give some contributions in the regional context. I think on the trafficking issue, it adopted a charter. And of course, the problem with the human rights issues are that uh, since human rights is basically conferring duty and obligation upon the state to ensure that their citizens are getting these rights, uh, perhaps the South Asian statesmen were not comfortable in ensuring that that should be given to a very regional bodies. Now, in the so far I remember, in the work of David Mitrani, who's on the book of Implied Power of United Nations, so he was advocating that nation states should surrender part of their sovereignty in order to form a regional organization. And from that line of interpretation, the more sovereignty is shared with the organization, the organization is strengthened. And that exactly happened in the context of Europe. Whereas and also in the context of Europe, if I mean, those who are students of international law will know that the Dutch scholar Virgil was, during his 1950s writing, clearly speculated that there will be serious complexity in the national and regional legal aspects unless European nations really do study and make mechanisms in order to settle that. So by making the regional courts and tribunals, a European region was successful, particularly in terms of avoiding the disputes, in terms of ensuring citizens' rights. But in our context, the heads of the states were not absolutely willing at all to give regional integration at all. Uh, at the private level, there are attempts. I'm sure many of you are aware about the refugee aspects in South Asia. I think in India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, we all, accommodate the largest number of refugees in the world. But, we don't have any such collective mechanism, collective bodies by which we could have been facilitated better in terms of, managing the refugee issues. So there, a particular, concern or a particular a kind of way out, what we see is that there was an attempt 20 years back around regarding to have a regional model law on refugees. And many of the South Asian scholars have worked on that. So that is really a guiding mechanism. Now, if you'd like to find the definitions of refugees, the rights and duties of the refugees. So this is an example that, working at the regional level, at the private capacities are also in a way contributing. But unless, again, the points where I would like to give my emphasis is that unless states are willing, to share their sovereignty and make a supra-regional, make a regional body, that will not really be very impactful, that will not bring fruitful integration. So in my opinion, in order to ensure, first of all, that and in order to think about the regional integrations, we have to certainly focus into the legal aspects, and that is where I think we can have a robust discussions and understandings on the legal aspects of regional integrations. SAARC had an attempt of SAPTA and then adopting SAFTA in the trade aspects. Of course, Raj is here who can share also. So there were attempts, in my view, in the SAARC, but that could not positively went well. In order to make that a regional integration is possible, my observation is that there should have, and there are examples from other regions. What we need is to have such kind of bodies and mechanisms. Particularly, we must, the regional, statesmen, the regional lawmakers must agree that they should have a vibrant, body. They should have a vibrant bodies to settle the regional disputes. That is something which I think should have a priority, and which I think should, be very important features in and when we talk about the regional integration aspects. For the legal integration aspects, it is very important for us, because most of the countries are common law based, and that we see the courts in our countries each other are citing one another's jurisprudence, decisions, and interpretations. We have many challenges which can easily be or could be mitigated by adopting this by recoursing to these legal mechanisms. So I would like to conclude here, and of course would like to make the discussion where in the discussion aspects, in the question answerings, we'll have more focus on different issues. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Mustafa Hussain. Now we will be welcoming questions. Zishan has already raised his hand. This is how we are going to go about it. You will raise your electronic hands, or you can type your question in the chat box, whichever suits you. And I'll begin with Zishan's question first. Please, Zishan.
Hello. Thank you, Muhammad Mustafa. It was very insightful. I loved it. It was short, I think 25 minutes presentation. and I loved it. And I have three questions, not one, so sorry to say that. But one question is that for means I believe for regional integration, this is very important step. Means without institutions, means the integration means, in my opinion, can't work. And you also said that. My first question is that, for example, in the case of European Union, like the institution they built, or for example, for the world order, United States and other countries, they build the institutions. So for those institutions, there were some fundamentals. And for Europe, it was very easy to create those fundamentals, means, for example, human rights related, believing that means there was a democracy here. And means in South Asia, we feel like the institutions are already weaker in the nation states, already existing nations. And human rights situation is already bad. Institutions are already bad there. And there is no fundamental which can connect, practical fundamental, not like the fundamental in terms of like cultural integration or something else. But there's no fundamental. We feel like, my opinion, but you will correct me, like there's no fundamental which could connect us in the South Asia and help us to create institutions. The second, what's your opinion on it? Do you think there is a fundamental which can help us to create institution? The second question is also related to is like the problem of enforceability. Means even we see that European Court of Justice or International Court of Justice, even United Nations at the global level, they're facing the biggest issue of the enforceability. And if Torque is already created in South Asia, and you know that the enforceability is kind of zero, or zero is a positive word, it can go to the negative side as well. So, do you think if institutions are built and the enforceability would be possible on the base of just institutional framework, or not like, mean, for example, we could say that enforceability is not like totally institutional, it's ethical as well. For example, when International Court of Justice say that that act is injustice, that gives the moral justification to the victim as well. So it's not necessarily the policing, but that moral justification and support is also considered as like enforceability. So my question is related to the enforceability. What would you say? The third is that means the current situation we are facing, as I said, that the international institutions are facing biggest issue. And for example, you said that, and I totally agree with it. So in order to go for regional integration, so surrendering sovereignty is the part of it. And that's also the reason, because when Brexit happened in European Union, and Brexit happens here in UK, so I was here, and I realized that the biggest issue was that the European Union was an institution which was against the sovereignty of, you can say that, the UK, and that was the reason they went for Brexit. So how would it be balanced, like the sovereignty of nations and plus the regional institutions as well? So these three questions I have. Thank you. Your mic is off, please.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you. Very insightful points you have made. Particularly if I go with the first one, the institutional challenge, you know, and that challenge is, of course, not only in Asia. That challenge is also in Africa. I think from the perspective of South Asia, like if I talk about human rights, for example, most of the nations have National Human Rights Commission, right? So in the South Asian region, I think what is necessary is to develop the nexus among these available institutions to the best possible extent. Certainly, it cannot be changed overnight, but it is a very long process. However, the question is in what perspective or in what way we are moving, whether we are going towards the direction of regional integration or our steps and attempts are against it. So I think that is where the institutions which are quite common in the nations, in the regions. So that can be facilitated. Of course, the most significant challenge here is the willingness of the state, and that is where I will also emphasize that the institutional challenges cannot be overcome. However, in today's world, in all the bargaining platform, we use win-win as a term, and I think that is one particular point of our point of bargaining, that okay, it's not going to get any kind of repercussions to others. It is rather a win-win approach and win-win situations for all. Had there been an integration of regional bodies, has there been more cooperations, that would really benefit us all. One of the fundamental areas where such kind of situations can work well is the example in the trade area. Like when the World Trade Organization come up with its trade liberalism. Of course, Russia, China, they were not in favor of it. They were out of this kind of mechanisms. But later on, they have joined it. They have joined it with the issue that in a world which is trade and economy based, you cannot keep yourself isolated. So that kind of realization in the regional aspect and perspective is also important, to realize that it is a win-win situations. So I think in that way, a particular sort of bargaining and positive way we can move ahead. In terms of enforceability, yes, I cannot agree more. Particularly in my point of view, I also mentioned that this is where African region are facing challenges. Nations, yes, they have created institutions, but they are not willing to be obliged by or to take the decisions for seriously. And it did particularly happened with the West African that court mechanism, where the West African countries particularly were not the ECOWAS Community Court of Justice. They were not really willingly taking the decisions and implementing them at the domestic level. So this enforcement challenge, how can they be mitigated? Again, it is what the state's willingness, but in a different way. I think the more people to people interaction, civil society's engagements, and the platforms like this one and many other platforms working in South Asia, they can pursue and pressurize, of course, the and sensitize the issues and pressurize the government. So in that way, perhaps to a particular extent, we can raise the concerns, and of course policymakers can get it. Third one is about the question of sovereignty, and this is where it's very it's a very difficult question, in fact, that states how far are in a position to share their sovereignty. In the case of Europe, it was certainly a point. They have deliberately surrendered part of their sovereignty, but what happened was the outcome. I think in terms of Europe, it is not that there are no challenges. I believe the issues about migration, Schengen region, visa issue, in all these, of course, they have challenges, but the question is how far the states, institutions, and regional bodies are proactive to safeguard and protect the citizens, to offer protections and to ensure that nothing is going to be messed up. So I think particularly this is one concern, that there are, of course, security and other challenges, and we have more challenges, but Tracing back to the historical aspects, the region was, of course, once and for most of the historical phases, it was same. It was not divided in the way it is divided today. So that is where I think a source of motivation and an experimental example it comes, that of course the South Asia, particularly the India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, they had no such borders and boundaries as it is today, and there were centuries of coexistence in the way. So I think from that line and perspective, more engagements and talks perhaps possibly help us. So I believe partly I've been able to respond. I think Professor Raj has a question. How
Yeah,
do
he has a question. Dr.
how
Raj
do
has
recent
asked how,
development in
yeah,
the
you,
West? Yeah. So how do recent development in the West, particularly Donald Trump's re-election, uh, and the
and the
ongoing
ongoing tariff
tariff
trade
trade
war.
war pose challenges to the globalization and reshape the global economic order? A very significant question. I think in terms of trade, the Trump's first regime was also giving some signals, like since I think 2020 onwards, USA was supposed to give one of its members in the WTO appellate body, and so far it has not given. So on the trade liberalization, I see the China, Russia joined on the one hand. On the other hand, United States was trying to show its, unwillingness to cooperate. Now the problem is that when the states have their disputes in the WTO, unless the appellate body decides and gives its reports, the implementation of those findings are impossible. Now currently, WTO is in a deadlock situation. So Trump's first, period was itself a signal of, how such situation was going to be happen, and it is exactly what we see today. I think, in my understanding, the tariff war. See, in my understanding, leadership is very important, particularly when we talk about their background. So as a business person, he finds the tariff as the most important tool, whereas Putin, you see, will be speaking about nuclear weapons. So each individual has its own ways of, approaching the world. But yes, that is certainly a serious concern, and mostly the abandoning or postponing all the projects, like in Bangladesh, US aid has given a straightforward letter to halt all the projects which were going on. So it is not only the trade war, it is also issues like the non-governmental organizations survival and functioning in countries like us. Of course, this is a serious challenge on the globalization. I will add to the to your point that his father assertion to withdraw from the World Health Organization is again another particular signals which will make an impact on strengthening the nationalism rather than the globalization. And of course, the global order in future seems more again reshaping towards nationalism, towards nation state orientation. Uh, that is where I think we should also have our thought, particularly WHO, WTO, and we know that from the climate change mechanism, United States has shown its unwillingness. So such kind of tools and global mechanisms, if is interrupted in their functionings, as it is the case with the WTO, World Trade Organization. So yes, the future seems very going to be quite fragmented, and it is more likely going to be more bilateral or more like state versus states than the organizations. So that is what my take on this.
Thank you, Dr. Hussain. On a lighter note, when Zishan was asking the questions, I was reminded of a seminar which he conducted some time ago in Pakistan, and I was in the audience, and I asked 3 questions from 3 speakers. There were 3 guest speakers, and he was the moderator. And he said, after I had asked the questions, he said because he was a moderator, he couldn't allow 3 questions to be asked, and he was going to disallow 2 of my questions. And today he did the same thing with you, but he was lucky that nobody else was asking the question, so I let it happen. But there was a desire in me to set the scores right. Before I ask my question, I have Fahim Abrar has a question. Before I ask my question, please, Fahim.
Assalamu alaikum, sir. I hope you're well. So thank you very much for your wonderful discussion. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Since I've been studying international security this semester from a political science perspective, something really caught up in my mind when you start discussing on the Westphalian approach and then the global order that we witness. So I would like to ask, like, as we witnessed as a failure to or compromise to Westphalia, that states like Finland in the Europe, which has compromised like its statehood for survival, or perhaps like to be a founding member of the EU. Apparently, it has been greatly assisted them in gaining economic prosperity and navigating the like challenges of Westphalian sovereignty. Do you anticipate, like, considering that all the states do not possess the equal power in terms of military, economy, trade, global affairs, and diplomacy, so do you anticipate such a thing in terms of a regional institution that we may in the future have faced something like that? Also, from a different perspective, for example, UK through the Brexit, they separated from the European Union. So both the perspectives are here that we have witnessed in terms of EU. So my question is, like, in terms of when we are aspiring for a regional order, for state cooperation, for enhancing prosperity, but against the backdrop, do you anticipate any such thing in South Asia? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. First of all, I think ideally, although it has been always said that a giant is as equal as a dwarf, and the Vettel's historical remarks on sovereign equality, global order has not been equal. Certainly, it is not. And as we keep talking about the structure of the Security Council itself within the United Nations framework, giving some nations a supra power to, regulate others and to do whatever they are willing to as per their wish and will. So in that line, first, from the very realist point of view, what we need to keep in mind is that global order, nation states are not equal. Certainly, we pursue towards the question of equality, but what is important is that the respect to certain fundamental principles that includes non-intervention, that includes prohibition of use of force, and that includes peaceful settlement of disputes. I think based on these principles, states can have a more persuasion towards peaceful transition. On the aspects of these regional challenges, as you see that, in last 20 years history, there are a second tier of states who are coming up with the idea of BRICS on the one hand, in terms of its economic strengthening. Of course, then, BRI as a project which led by China. So anyway, these kind of projects, which advocates for cooperation, which advocates for investments and economic benefits, whatever be the way they are projecting, those really imbibes towards integration of countries in terms of their relationship. In a way, even if on certain points we see the challenges of least integration, we see the challenges of nations not, approaching towards integration, not approaching towards relationship development. On the other hand, we see otherwise things are happening in a different directions. So linking your point to what Professor Raj was, picking up a very important aspects and the most important relevance for today's discussion is the US policy. So what we see, even if US takes a very surprising policy of non-cooperation with international organizations, withdrawal from some of the organizations. Certainly, the others on the reverse side will come up with the idea, and they have certain platforms. They will work things. I think in a way, if one part of the world goes in one direction, the other parts will certainly have different directions. That is one of the natural phenomena the states do have competing with each others. So, but yes, I also have my thought about what you rightly mentioned on the question of security aspect. So, on the question of security aspect, the challenge we have are, of course, and that I think is connected with the economy also and politics also. So the thing is, we anticipate and we should anticipate from different perspectives at the same time, whatever way it goes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Before I request Dr. Raj for the concluding remarks, just a small question from my side. Since the Treaty of Westphalia and the concept of modern nation state, the West in particular has been divorcing itself from the interference of religion in the affairs of the state, or vice versa, and it's basically a secular model there where state and religion do not necessarily have anything to do with each other. Whereas in South Asia, when we look at South Asia, it's not only that people are very possessive of their religions. Most of the time, the states are resorting to religious mantras and religious slogans as part of state policies. And South Asia is far from, still a long way from the secular ideal. Even in a country like India, which had been espousing the secular ideal for a long time, it is trending away from that ideal. So religion is basically a fault line in South Asia. So the examples that you've given of the European Court of Human Rights and Inter-American Court of Human Rights, they do not have such fault lines which can be the deal breakers. So how do you think South Asia can overcome or smooth over this obstacle of heightened religious sentimentality and religious interference with the affairs of the state? Thank you.
So very, challenging questions, particularly for South Asia. Now, again, if I go back to Europe, just before Westphalia was, agreed upon by the states, it was, of course, the crusade, the wars between Protestant and Catholic, and that continued a prolonged period of time. I think Europe was continuing these kind of killings for quite long, and again, after the establishment of nation states, it was not a smooth transition. They had to come in Congress of Vienna about equal sovereign power, where they were encountered serious challenge by Napoleon in expanding the national borders and boundaries. and that also reflected in subsequent 2 world wars. So religion and non-religion both had challenges. The Europe had serious challenges on issues of, even in their after even settling their goals and ideals about peaceful coexistence. On the other hand, in case of South Asia, one of the aspect is, I think, require the people's sensitization about certain facts and understanding that if I specifically mention India, Bangladesh, and Pakistan, even if in whatever way they are isolated from each other, anything happens in anywhere in these countries can have and immediately do have implications in the counterparts, and that has been happening, that has been evident from every point of view what we see. But again, from the histories, what we see is that it was quite coexistent. Shashi Tharoor, I think he makes these remarks quite often that, of course, Shia Sunni had no issue before the colonizers were, taking the lead on these issues. And of course, in Hindus and other Buddhists, there were coexistence. The challenge will remain, particularly on the question of religion, because that gives a benefit to certain groups, and I'm sure these projects will continue. The alternative ideas are only to have communities, people to grow up with a broader mindset, and as we see, we have South Asian diasporas abroad, and you all are aware and experimenting that. I'm sure in London, the people of the South Asians, India, Bangladeshis, Pakistanis, they all are living together and in peaceful coexistence. So it's more like the willingness of the states, I think, more important. The challenges, of course, will remain, cannot be changed overnight, but nonetheless, a certain level of states involvement with each other in its positive policy makings and regional ways of looking things, I think that will give benefit. Moreover, focusing what Professor Yuvraj in Nepal tried to articulate is that focusing on economic development is also very important. I think when this question comes, the priorities of South Asian common citizens, common nationals are not questioning about the economic aspects. So I think that is where we need to give more focus and emphasis, because economic challenges, progressing individuals' fate is more important, and it is important. It is more like the diversion of focus, in my opinion and view. So thank you. And it opens more questions about questioning on these issues.
Thank you very much, Professor Sen. Dr. Raj has excused himself. His internet is not stable, so he will not be able to conclude. I'm going to request Zishan to please conclude the meeting for us.
Just before conclusion, I would like to give as thanks to, I think many of my students have joined. So it is Friday and it is a holiday there in Dhaka. Nonetheless, they have joined. So my special thanks.
I also thank all of them on behalf of PRISA. Thank you very much. Ji Zishan.
Okay. Thank you very much, Umar, for giving me opportunity for concluding remarks, even though I don't think so that I am in that position to give concluding remarks. One thing is that it's not my field. The second thing is that I'm not senior at that level. Muhammad Mustafa and his presentation is, I'm very happy during this presentation that because the topic is very, very important. And I believe because I'm pro-institutional you can say that in my thinking, in my PhD research and all those things, institutions are key not only to maintain a nation state, it's also key to maintain international order and also regional integration as well. And this event was very important in terms of understanding what are the practical issues and how those practical issues can be solved. And the practical issues can be solved only the first step must be like the institutions, and means we should also learn from this presentation. I have learned we should learn from the case studies, especially related to ASEAN, how they made it possible. Means South Asia at the level we are, European Union and NAFTA, it looks like very superior to us because of many linkage, and through those linkage they made their integration possible. But ASEAN is a very good you can say case study for us because they started from scratch and they made the regional integration, which is at the very high success level, and with the passage of time they are developing and they are making it possible that even without like strong, you can say, the fundamental between them, only through trade and only through the mutual benefits they can create good institution. We should definitely talk about it, and also why, as Muhammad Mustafa mentioned, that the Arab states, they also wanted such kind of institutions, but they couldn't make it. So we should also study what were the reasons of their failures and how the South Asia could also learn from it. And through different regional, you can say, institutions, we can learn from it, and that learning will help us to make the South Asian integration possible. I'm thankful to I'm thankful to Muhammad Mustafa for this insightful presentation, and I hope he will also keep contributing, supporting us in terms of his presentation and ideas, and also through his role as the member of the advisory council. Thanks, Umar, again.
Thank you, Zishan. Thank you, Professor Mustafa Hussain. It's been a real pleasure. It was a very enlightening session. I'm glad you could take time and enlighten us with this angle on the integration of South Asia. I thank all the participants for wonderful discussion. The questions were uh, what made the discussion even more insightful and deeper. Thank you very much. We end the session here, and we hope to see all of you soon for another webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a good evening.